Okay, welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, J.R. Stewart.
And I'm your co host, Tommy Duncan. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. Tonight we're going to have hopefully a meaningful, insightful discussion to talk about the living conditions that some of our people, Black people, find themselves in, which I don't understand why more is not done to clean these areas up. When you have areas where everyone doesn't have a trash can. I mean, I have a trash can and a recycle bin, and I barely use those each week. I live in an area where the streets are clean, the trash is picked up, so I don't deal with this. But there are people who don't have it as well. But to me, your house doesn't have to be as large, your property doesn't have to be as valuable, but at the very least, everybody should be entitled to have their trash picked up and shouldn't have to live with trash. And then, of course, when you start piling up trash, rats and other insects, dirty stuff happen. Diseases and everything else follows that. What say you, Tom?
Well, I mean, I would agree. I think everybody in America should have what we might call an inalienable right to have decent housing, an opportunity to have a decent job, whatever that looks like, to take care of their families, et cetera, and to live in what we would consider to be at least reasonable living conditions. But we obviously understand that that's not a fair and equitable as nothing else is in America. We understand that even though everyone has an opportunity, everyone doesn't have the same opportunity.
I understand that, Tom, but I'm talking about a city picking up trash. The sanitation department shouldn't have a map overlaid with tax revenue to see where they need to go do a good job and where they can just do a half-ass job. I mean, they should go out every day and pick up the trash for the whole city. That's what they're getting paid for. I mean, is there? I mean, I understand that cities distribute resources based on tax revenue, but on something as basic as trash pickup, what about water? Should people in upper income areas get better, cleaner quality water than someone in a poor area of town?
No, they shouldn't. However, when you consider the fact that they probably understand how the political infrastructure works better than the poorer areas, they have the disposable income to be able to, um, for lack of a better term, nourish the political system, take time to be able to develop relationships with the politicians who run that area of the city. Uh, they obviously get better service level than other areas do.
Okay, but once again, I'm coming back to the basic issue of fairness. Um, if you have responsibility to just pick trash up, now I can understand when you're talking about maybe a police force. You may want to protect the more valuable areas of town a little bit more because they contribute more. But for trash pickup, it seemed like that's just picking up trash, dumping it, and taking it, putting it in the truck, and taking it to the wherever your waste management facility is to dump it. And it seems like that should not be based um, on income or property values. That's just my take. Um, so we had some videos Tom queued up. Do you want to go back to the very first one we had queued up, or do you want to jump to the last one? The last one is a brother commenting on some volunteers who came in from out of state to help pick up trash. And then I want to talk about, since you mentioned politics, the political aspect of this to see if there is a political connection. I hope there isn't, but you know how I think. I think everything is tied to politics in some way.
Yes.
I want to get your feedback and comment. So let's jump into the third video, and if we have time, we may go back and revisit the first two. And folks, I apologize because I queued them up early, um, so we may not get a chance to see them on this particular episode. But we'll see if we have time. So let's cue up the video and see what this brother has to say, and then Tom, I want to get your feedback on it afterwards.
many of those neighborhoods. And this conservative activist named Scott Pressler, he took initiative to go over there to help revitalize the neighborhood, and many people caught wind of that and decided to join him in this project. And the idea is to help a fellow, American city, come up from the squalor that they're in, so that we could actually help each other make America great again. So this was more so supposed to be like a apolitical, event where we're just helping to help. But that was not received by many, I guess, black progressives that lived there. There were some locals there that were helping, of course, but then there were other locals that did not receive it. And I would say at large, the black community and Democrats did not appreciate that. And in fact, they saw this as a bunch of white supremacists coming over to like clean up as a ploy to get more people to vote for the white supremacist Nazi Donald Trump. So, for example, you can see that in this tweet by Daryl Lamont Jenkins. He says, "Heads up, Baltimore! If you are anywhere near North Fulton Ave and Westwood Ave, a few well-known neo-fascist glory hounds that like to pull stunts, pretend they are not, namely Jack Posobiec and Scott Pressler, are in Baltimore, making like they are doing a cleanup of the city." So then, I don't know what's the warning for. Where you?
Okay, we're gonna stop it there. As he goes into other commentary. So Tom, from a little video clip, you can see how depressed that area is. Boarded up buildings, houses falling apart, trash everywhere, and for volunteers to come together and want to help clean this up. How in the world could anyone find a problem with that? I mean, so what if these are some Trump supporters? If the KKK wanted to come help clean your neighborhood up, go put a mask on and some gloves and clean up. I mean, it's embarrassing that other people have to come, and it's not just the trash. I don't know if you noticed from the video. Did you see the vegetation growth?
Yes.
On the fence. I mean, you have to clean the weeds up just to get to the trash.
No, I'd agree. I mean, and again, I don't know too much about that particular neighborhood, but I guess it kind of speaks to a couple of different things. One, you have to make an investment in the welfare of your own community, number one. And number two, his commentary, kind of speaks, unfortunately, to the divisiveness in this country on political lines. That unfortunately, we've reached a point where we are so focused on what side you're on that you don't understand that there's a medium divide, that regardless of what political side you're on, you're still an American citizen. And I guess it speaks to that we've just reached a very dire state in our political narrative in this country, that's what folks are focusing on as opposed to solving problems.
Are black people hard? Are they hard enough on their leaders, regardless of color? I mean, I hate to just narrow it down to the black leadership, but just say in general, are poor black people, are we making enough noise? Are we complaining enough? Are we demanding that our representatives do more for our areas? Now, I heard Barack say when he was running that we're supposed to look out for the least among us. I'm thinking someone living in that condition. Now, personally, if I found myself living there, I'm thinking that I got to find a way to clean this mess up, at least for my little spot, or encourage everyone for us to keep together every weekend and find a spot to clean up and then keep it clean. If there are not enough trash cans, we need to be down at City Hall every single day, whenever we have time, protesting and demanding that the city provide trash cans to every resident in that area. And then even for the commercial areas, there should be public trash cans on every corner at least. And then the commercial properties, they should be required to contact Waste Management and put a dumpster out back. And then have it picked up where you don't have trash piling over and then have rats flowing in and out of them. I mean, I don't think, where is code enforcement in these areas? Now, where I live now, I've gotten 2 citations for having grass that was more than 14 inches high on my privacy fence. Well,
14 inches high, Jimmy. That's pretty high.
14 inches. It grows any longer than 14 inches. So you may have to get a weed. Now I don't like using the weed eater on the wood because it chips away the wood. But if I cut the grass and I don't find a way to get a few little weeds that pop up between the boards and they grow more than 14 inches, then code enforcement is writing me a citation. Where is code enforcement for Baltimore?
Well, I think you brought up a point a little bit earlier in terms of being able to demand more. I think that's a byproduct of a couple of things. One is understanding how the system works, and two is obviously having the incentive and or taking the time to do something about it. And unfortunately, in some cases, Jimmy, when some folks are just struggling to put food on their plate, it may not be a priority, number one. But then for the two who are supposed to be doing something about it, the politicians, and you brought up a question earlier, are we doing enough to hold our politicians accountable? Clearly, in an area like that, they are not, because ultimately everyone has the same job to do, just in a different area of the city, to put quite simply. So if you have folks who are underperforming on their job, just like in any other company, you need to replace them. And that's what politics is. You have a city council person, you have someone who is a county board member. If they're not doing their job, you replace them with somebody else who will.
Tom, is that possible when we vote color? When we look at the black politician and figure, oh, well, the white one won't do any better, so I may as well just stick with, my brethren. Are we doing ourselves justice by having that type of mindset?
Well, Jimmy, I think ultimately, if you have an area that is, in most cases, Jimmy, and this is just the way it is in America, with a few exceptions, you look at the politics, and the politics kind of go along with the color. So let's say if we're in Dallas, if we go into Highland Park, you're not going to find a whole lot of black city council people representing that district because it's predominantly white. And
That's
so
correct.
in large and predominantly Hispanic or black areas of any city, typically the politicians, with some exceptions, are going to usually represent that district because, ideally speaking, they live in that district. And if it's overwhelmingly black or Hispanic or white, usually a person lives in that district, they represent that district, and that's where the talent comes from, with some exceptions, of course.
Okay. Well, I agree with you on that point, Tom. I still think it's a sad commentary. And I think we need to educate our people, one, to vote their interests and vote for the best person who's going to serve you, and don't vote color and don't vote party. I mean, as long as we're voting for a black Democrat because they're black and because they're a Democrat and we believe that everybody else is racist, we're going to end up with people who are going to take you for granted. And obviously, when a city can't even come pick up the trash on a scheduled, regular basis, can't provide trash cans to every one of its citizens, I guarantee you, there is not a University Park doesn't have this problem. I'd be willing to bet Turtle Creek doesn't have a trash can problem. And you may find some people down in Bonton who don't have a trash can. And I hope that they pick the phone up and call City Hall, that City Hall would promptly bring them one. I'm not totally confident in it, but I hope that at least Dallas would do that for every one of its citizens. But for a city like Baltimore, the black politicians there, not just the black, all the politicians there should be ashamed that people have to live this way.
Well, I guess what you're right, Jim, and I guess what is a shame is that they can't find someone who will represent those areas of the city who will represent the best interests of the citizens in that area. I think that is, regardless of what color it is, if they can't find someone who has the understanding or the political savvy to be able to represent their district, regardless of what the economics are, then that's the same. And if the people are not prepared to vote for someone who will do their job, then that's a problem. That person needs to be replaced. I mean, I guess it comes. I mean, most of us. I don't know if they still have civics class in high school anymore, Jimmy. I know we used to have civics
No.
class, but that's the stuff that you learned in civics class.
Well, Tommy, you have a city where I think the last four mayors have been indicted on federal fraud charges. Um, they've had four chief of police in the last year and a half. So crime just runs rampant. We have that much fraud taking place, dishonest people running the city. Everyone's trying to line their pocket. There's just not a whole lot of desire to do the right thing. I think everyone, not everyone, but it seems like the culture there in Baltimore is how much money can I stuff in my pocket? And it just, to me, it doesn't seem like the white citizens of Baltimore are making enough noise. They make noise if it affects their area, but even the white people or people who live in the better side of Baltimore, you guys should be ashamed of this also. That your city is being this derelict, that you have this many criminals and crooks running your city, and it can't just be, well, they take care of me, so I don't care about what happens on the other side of town. You should care. You should care because you should not sit back and turn your back as if this problem doesn't exist. The people there know that this exists. Everyone knows there's a rat problem in Baltimore. Everyone knows there's a trash problem, a crime problem, a drug problem. And so if you turn your back, what does the Bible say about the Good Samaritan and not helping because of fear that it may be a trap and that the robbers may come down and rob you? So you walk away and turn your back on the Samaritan, on the person that needs help. But the Good Samaritan had enough nerves and guts to actually stop and help someone. So you're not serving your community when you let the people on your city or your area suffer this way, and because the city takes care of you and that your streets and neighborhoods are clean, that you don't care about how other people live. We should all care, like John Donne says. What does it say? No one is a. What is it? I'm sorry, I need to get the quote right. Um, that we're all involved in mankind, and that that basically no one is separated from the next person. That we're all connected. Um, so if you look at it that way, that we're all connected, then we can't let our brothers and our sisters live in squalid conditions like that. I'm not saying you go and rebuild their area. I mean, that would be nice. They do bear some responsibility, but for the parts that are collective, like picking up trash, sewage, those things they shouldn't have to fight for.
I'd agree.
That's it, Tom. You agree?
I'm not disagreeing with you on that, Jimmy. It's just that
I get some.
fairness is an ideal scenario, but it's typically not the case. Folks who have more money typically get more justice. Folks who come from certain communities who have certain social castes usually get more fairness than folks who don't. And so, unfortunately, even though fairness is the ideal scenario, it in principle it is, but in practice it's usually not the case. And so, folks who have less money, folks who grew up on the other side of the tracks, folks who are a little bit darker usually have to work harder, 3 to 4 times as much to get the same opportunities as folks who are on the right side of the tracks. And so that's just the way it has usually gone.
Now let's hit the politics angle of it real quick before we run out of time because we're coming towards the end of the show. Is this a political issue? I would like to think that if you look at West Plano, if you look at Allen, you look at Fairview, McKinney, Frisco, the colony to some extent, South Lake Carroll, Roanoke, the Trophy Club, areas that are heavily run by Republicans in the DFW area. Would these conditions exist? Would Republicans allow their constituents to live in these conditions? What say you?
Jimmy, I don't know enough about those metropolitan areas, that you're speaking of, but I can tell you that practically every large city and every small town usually has a poor side. And usually that poor side usually have a tendency to have darker skinned people. Every small town that I've been to, every big city I've been to, and usually everything in between, there's usually two sides of the track. And usually the wrong side of the track that has less services, typically the folks have a tendency to get a little bit darker. They have a little bit more color on them. Is it right? No. Is it the way it is? Yes. Did it happen by accident? No, it happened by design.
So, are there any solutions, Tom? What are the answers here? I mean, what can we encourage people who live in the inner city, who live in these conditions? What is our recommendation besides going down to City Hall and burning the buildings down that they can do to get somebody's attention to change these conditions? Or is it going to be just a case where the folks here just have to live with it, that this just becomes the new norm?
No, I don't agree with that. I think there are a couple of things, and I don't know that it solves all problems. But one is education. You have to be aware of how the politics runs in your city or in your county so that you can take advantage of it. Because first you need to understand how the rules work, and then you got to understand how to manage and or bend the rules. Because typically things don't run by the rules. They are run based upon the folks who usually have the most gold in their hand. So you need to understand how the rules are, how to work and or bend the rules. And long term, when it comes to money, politics, it really comes down typically to education. Because at the end of the day, usually where you find nicer neighborhoods, better homes, better opportunities, usually have a better education system. In all cases, no. In most cases, usually so. And so that's why you typically find families who are trying to find the best education systems, because usually where the better education systems are, those are the better neighborhoods. But at the end of the day, part of it, you got to educate yourself on how the politics works in your city and in your state, because the sooner you understand that, Jimmy, the sooner you're going to be able to use your political clout to get something out of it. But if you are uninformed, if you are miseducated, if you don't know how things work, you can almost guarantee that you're going to get the absolute worst service. You're going to get the absolute worst results, to your point, whether it comes to not getting the trash picked up, not getting the streets fixed, not getting the best out of your education system, and or getting absolutely nothing out of your politicians. At the end of the day, it comes down to education and awareness.
Okay. Now, before the conversation we had before the airing, you did mention Atlanta and DC. So let's close out on those as a contrast, where you have a large black population that is probably more educated than some other areas, and then contrast how they live in those areas and what they're willing to put up with versus, I hate to keep picking on these people in Baltimore, but they could be almost any metropolitan city, high crime, high drugs, and low education.
I think it's cause and effect. And when you look at areas like DC or Atlanta or Connecticut or some of those California, again, where you see more businesses, more centers of higher learning, you push a lot more capital, new ideas into the environment. Typically, you're talking about, with some exception, areas where you have more of a home dwelling environment as opposed to an apartment living environment. And it changes the whole texture and outcome of the way people think, and therefore, what they expect, or for that matter, what they demand. And so when you look at Atlanta, tons of great schools in Georgia or the Atlanta metro area. When you look at DC, tons of schools in those areas. But obviously, you also have a lot of business in those areas that attracts a lot of people, that attracts a certain caliber of people with a certain level of education, a certain level of income. And so their whole level of political savvy and awareness is different. And that benefits the other folks who may not be as educated, but who are willing to work hard, who are willing to get some modicum of comfort out of life.
Okay. Well, folks, you've heard it here from Tom, and Tom would not mislead you. So If he says education and is part of the solution, and I agree with him that we do need to better. We need to make sure our kids are educated, have safe areas, and then we just have to do a lot more and be a lot more demanding. And if that just comes down to education, then I wish that some of our people who are more educated can come back to the city, um, bring some of that savvy with them, some of that moxie, some of that. I'm going to go down and complain because that everyone, the city, the people who work for me should be doing a better job of serving me. So Tom, you're 100% correct. And so let's hope our people get the message
Yeah,
and get out there and just realize you do not have to take this. You have a right to a clean street.
that's
There's
right.
nothing wrong with you demanding the city pick up the trash.
And
Now, when
one,
you come down to crime and other things, that may be a little bit more of a fight, but for basic sanitation, that is not something that you should have to go beg for. You have a right to this.
And one thing that I do want to clarify when I mentioned that earlier, it doesn't mean that everybody needs to, have a college degree. That's not what I'm speaking of. I mean, I think we obviously want to make sure that, we get as much education as we can. But what that means, Jimmy, is reading, learning. Some of the smartest people in the world never went to college. So I'm not
That is
speaking
true.
specifically in terms of getting, higher education, but, you should be reading, you should be learning as much as you can, regardless of whether it's in higher education or not. And that ultimately is going to produce results. I mean, folks, I believe it's Bill Gates. He never got a college degree. He's one of the
You're
wealthiest
not.
men in the world.
I'm not even sure Zuckerberg graduated college.
I believe he did not.
I think he helped write Facebook code, and I've heard some stories that he swindled the other person out of the rights to it. But that's neither here or there. I don't want to get into that. But you're right. You have some very rich and powerful people who never went to college. But like you said, does come down to reading. It does come down to your level of what you're willing to put up with and take. But some people just don't know any better. And for those who do know, we do have some responsibility to help bridge the gap to those who don't know that they don't have to take this. And so we all need to be locked on together and be willing to go down to. I wish the people in Baltimore would put more pressure on the local government there to do the right thing for all its citizens. White, black, red, or brown, rich, poor, all come together and demand that this gets taken care of. So, Tom, I'm going to let you have the last word and say goodbye to our folks, and then we'll get together next week.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jimmy. We want to thank everyone who one is listening to us today. We hope you learned something interesting, and we're welcome to your thoughts and ideas. So please do kind of feed your thoughts in terms of what you'd like for us to discuss in future segments. Of course, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to Black Men Speak on YouTube, and we look forward to your input and being able to help lift the tide.
Lift the tide. All right. So with that
All
being
right,
said,
folks.
we're going to call it a night. Thank you,
Thank you very
everyone.
much. All right.